قل هذه سبيلي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة أنا ومن اتبعني وسبحان الله وما أنا من المشركين.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد. Ikhlaas in seeking knowledge. Seeking knowledge, they're intertwined, and Ikhlaas are intertwined. And you won't have tawfiq in seeking knowledge without Ikhlaas. When you study, you apply, you convey this deen, you need Allah's help. You need Allah's aid in the honorable task of both learning and teaching. You lack Ikhlaas in seeking and teaching Islam, and Allah will render you on your own. What students of knowledge need to keep in mind is when we have a deficiency in Ikhlaas, our punishment is worse than anyone else. If we attribute ourselves and we try and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be students of knowledge, if we don't fix our intentions, our punishment is worse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose you as a student of ilm to honor you with the ilm. Allah honored you with that. Allah gave it to you. A student of ilm should walk around feeling they have a crown of honor on their heads from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they were chosen by Allah to absorb and convey this message. So they can't have no room or deficiency in Ikhlaas. من يرد الله به خيرا يفقهه في الدين. Whoever Allah wants good in, He will grant him knowledge of the deen. The opposite meaning, مفهوم المخالفة in Arabic, the opposite meaning is whoever Allah does not want good in, He will deprive him of this knowledge. That's why you see many people deprived. Some people so eager, come, they want to study, first 2-3 classes, and they're gone. Allah didn't want no good in them. Allah chose to honor you with this noble task. And if you have any deficiency in your Ikhlaas, then you chose other than Allah or gave a percentage to other than Allah. Is that a just way to deal in with Allah? Allah chose you to honor you. He chose you. He could have chose other than you. And you choose other than Allah with that which He chose to honor you with. The punishment comes worse in a student of ilm. Who's the first one to go to Jahannam? وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. عالم, قارئ, mujahid. One of the most horrific hadith for us is this hadith that makes the hair stand on end. Wallah al-azim. He learned. He's knowledgeable. He studied. He had knowledge. And that gets him to Jahannam. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. He learned and he taught to be called a alim, or for worldly gain, his intention. People gave him respect. They gave him a title. They honored him because Allah honored him with that knowledge. But he chose worldly gain. The second is a reciter who recited. So people can say he's recited. Look at his voice. Look at how he memorizes the Quran. Mujahid, who fought to be called the hero. In all of them, the intention was the deficiency. The 3 categories, people looked up to them because they're among the best categories. Ordaining the good and forbidding the evil. Reciters who recite and teach. And those who defend this ummah. They are the purest ibadat. And that's why they're the first to enter Jahannam wal-'iyadhu billah with deficiency in Ikhlaas. A sincere mukhlis, who is sincere in being a alim or a reciter or a mujahid, he gets among the highest ranks in Jannah. If Allah gives the sincere mukhlis the high ranks in Jannah, then the opposite is true. In that one who negated the ikhlas in those matters will be punished most severely in Jahannam. They are the first to go to hell if they lack sincerity, right? The opposite is true. And those who fix their sincerity are among the first to enter Jannah and get the highest levels in Jannah. And the opposite is true. Those who didn't, first in Jahannam and in the bottom of Jahannam. If I had a friend or a student or a brother and I brought him close to me, then he betrayed me. Isn't that worse than a stranger or an enemy betraying me? No doubt about it. Remember, I tweeted upon my release, at the end, we will remember not the words and torture of our enemies, I said, but the silence and betrayal of our friends. Betrayal from a close one is much more hurtful. Whereas sometimes what comes from strangers or enemies, you care less about. In fact, you expect it. No matter what they do, you expect it and more. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored you with knowledge. So man up to the task with sincerity. He brought you near Him in this ibadah. He brought you near Him in this ibadah, in this honorable task. Don't betray it with insincerity. Don't be one who gives Allah His back and people His face after He was honored with knowledge in what Allah honored you with. When you give sincerity to other than Allah, that's just like you give your back to Allah. He gave you that knowledge, and you gave your back to Allah and your face to people who didn't give you that knowledge. This is a matter that we need to work on day and night. You will find with more ikhlas, the barakah becomes more and more. The barakah will be in your life, in your knowledge. Every aspect of your life will have barakah in it with sincerity in talab al-ilm. You will find the talib ilm who's sincere, Allah will give him barakah in his life and his wealth. You will find the talib ilm who may not have, for example, maybe $20, yet people perceive him to be wealthy. Allah blessed him. Allah gave him barakah in his knowledge and his wealth. With proper, and in his happiness in his life. With proper intention, Allah, Ash-Shakur, showers one with sweetness in his heart and blessings in his life, in this life, before the next. And that's the meaning of Ash-Shakur. Ash-Shakur, the most appreciative. That's the meaning of it. With sincerity comes barakah in knowledge. When one is sincere, you will study and absorb more. You will feel that with sincerity. The same book you've been studying, or the Quran you've been reading for so long, when you work on your sincerity, Allah will open your mind to deeper meanings you never thought of before. What's the difference? It's the same book. Sincerity is ikhlas. That's why you get astonished at how the older ulama took lessons from verses. You say, how did they get that out of the verse? The point is clear, your intention in this path. Every word you say in da'wah. Why did I say this? Why did I type this status? Why did I send that tweet? Every time. Sometimes you're on social media and you're giving da'wah. You get slandered or you get dragged into an argument or a debate. If you fear that your reply is in retaliation for your own person and not for the cause that you were given in da'wah, then back away. Don't send it. Complete silence for Allah is better than responding and quarreling that ends up being half for Allah and half for personal gain. Don't worry about your person. Defend the cause, not your person. When knowledge is barricaded from sincerity or action, it becomes something one will regret, and its harm is more than its help. Knowledge was not meant to gain followers. Knowledge wasn't meant to impress sisters or to marry a second and third and fourth wife, or to get popular. Talabat al-ilm are not rock stars and comedians. They are talabat ilm, as the Salaf used to say. When one used to seek knowledge, it became apparent on his actions. You would see it on him. You would see it in his attitude, in his appearance, once they turned to knowledge. You could see the change to the better. That's what they mean. Ilm is not something to play those games with. The first to go to hell is a alim. Wallahi al-azim, that's something to be taken seriously. That's not something to be taken lightly. Be careful. Do you know this hadith that I just mentioned to you, that we say and we take so casually, the alim is the first to enter hell? This hadith that made Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anh fall unconscious in fear 3 times before he was able to say it. The hadith about a alim entering hell. Abu Hurairah tried to tell that to someone. He fell unconscious 3 times before he was able to say it. Out of fear of his intention. In Sunan al-Tirmidhi, Shafi al-Asbahi said, he's a tabi, I went to the masjid and I seen people gathering around a man. I said, who's this man? He said, Abu Hurairah. He said, that's Abu Hurairah? He said, I stood there until people left. When I was with him alone, I said, teach me a hadith you fully comprehended from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, Nashagha Abu Hurairah. What does nashagha mean? Nashagha means he took a deep sigh and he fainted unconscious. He was about to say the hadith, took a deep sigh and fell unconscious. When he was about to say, he said, I'll tell you the hadith. He fell unconscious. Then he awoke, he wiped his face. He said, okay, I'll tell you the hadith. Then as he was about to say this hadith, Nashagha Abu Hurairah. He fell unconscious again. He took a deep sigh, fell unconscious. Then he wipes his face a 3rd time. And then he falls unconscious a 3rd time. Then he awoke and he was able to finally mention this hadith. Where a person who is of the Quran or mujahid or gives in charity are the first to enter hell because of their lack of sincerity. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu feared that hadith. I ask you by Allah, what are we going to say today? That's something to analyze and look at. That's why I told you we'll devote a halaqah today. Sincerity is not easy. And it needs a lot of work on it. If Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh passed out 3 times fear and sincerity, or a hadith that has sincerity in it, from this hadith, Ahmad Jibril, what should you say? Ahmad Jibril should be in a coma right now. Wallahi, that's true. من تعلم علما مما يبتغى به وجه الله عز وجل لا يتعلم إلا ليصيب به عرضا من الدنيا لم يجد عرف الجنة. رواه Abu Dawood. Whoever studies knowledge, doesn't do so except for worldly matters, will not get the عرف الجنة. عرف الجنة is, I never mentioned this hadith before, is the smell of heaven. We have to check our Ikhlaas day and night, every detail of our path, every little tiny deed that we do, fix the intention. When one commits a sin, they get a black dot on their hearts, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, unless they wash it off with repentance. كَلَّا بَرَّانَ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. One who doesn't wash it off, of course, will have a darkened heart, and then it becomes, when it's dark like that, it becomes upside down. Like a cup that's upside down, you try to put water in it, it rejects water. You can't put a, that's why you talk to some people, they're in one avenue and you're in one avenue. Deficiency in Ikhlaas is very similar in that it starts small, like those dots. It starts in little matters, the deficiency. It starts like tiny hair strings that make a rope. A little deficiency in Ikhlaas is like a hair string. If you don't get rid of that string, by fixing your intention and clearing your intention, washing your intention and making it pure, you get another string, like those dots, the hair string, and another hair string. Before you know it, the heart is swaddled in a tight rope of complete insincerity. Once that rope swaddles, that's the point of no return. or almost of no return. That's when seeking knowledge becomes for fame. Teaching is for money and prestige and to impress the community. A da'iyah becomes known more for his personal life and wealth and hotels that he goes in and out more than his da'wah itself. So clean the heart from those hair strings before the rope swaddles your heart in insincerity. The heart in pertaining to Ikhlaas has one face. Has a face and has a back. Has one face. You can either face Allah with your heart of Ikhlaas or face people in worldly matters. It's one or the other. You can't do both. It has one face. If you face people in Ikhlaas, you give Allah your back. If you face Allah in Ikhlaas, you give people your back in Ikhlaas, and that's where you want to be. That's where you want your heart to be. When one is in a noble task of learning and teaching, he is on a thin line. He's walking on a thin line. There's no room for play. When you're walking on a thin line, suspended in air, do you sit around and play up there? Like they do in the circus? Do they sit and play on the rope? You gotta be walking on a thin line. One sees his followers. One sees people listening to him and he starts to win arguments and debates or begins to correct people, or even at times when someone's in the noble duties of the most noble duties, you see some karamat of victory. You can't at that point let your Ikhlaas relax. And that's what happens a lot of the times. The tainting in Ikhlaas begins to seep in if one doesn't constantly wash it out. Look at the flip side of it all. We said the higher rank in Jannah goes to certain people. Those who hold themselves to a higher standard. If the first three to enter hell is a alim, a reciter, and a mujahid, then the opposite is true. We always said Allah holds you to a higher standard. Who the first to enter Jannah is the messengers after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because they are the heads of the ulama. They are the heads of the ones who ordain the good and forbid the evil. That's why the ulama are called the inheritors of the messengers, warathat al-anbiya. The closer one is to them, the closer he will enter in his actions and deeds, the closer he will enter Jannah after and right behind them and near them. If you want that high rank and that honorable entry with the messengers, you need to know that you're going to be held at a higher standard. A standard so high that if you mess up, you'll be the first to enter Jahannam, wal-'iyadu billah. See how dangerous that is? Sometimes ilm, learning and teaching becomes a desire in itself for itself. It becomes like food, water, or even like sexual relationship. I can give you many examples. We don't have time. But I can give you examples where it becomes an addiction for itself. Some people learn just to learn. It's addiction and joy. That's not why we learn. We learn for the sake of Allah, and that's another matter we need to purify our hearts from. Knowledge is joy. It is joyful to learn, but we learn for the sake of Allah, to fix ourselves and others. Our messenger taught for 13 years Tawheed. Tawheed for 13 years. Nuh taught them 950 years worth of Tawheed. La ilaha illallah. They knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose them for the task, so they remained firm with Ikhlaas on that task. It would not be an exaggeration to say the majority of the problems of this ummah come from insincerity of especially talabat al-ilm and ulama. If me and you learn for the sake of Allah, we go about and teach for the sake of Allah, the teaching of the pure, unadulterated teaching, and it's all for the sake of Allah. Can you tell me where the tyrants are going to find so-called shuyukh to give them the free open fatwa? Today, some ulama give a blank paper to the tyrant rulers with the bottom of it signed and stamped. Go ahead, just write on the top whatever you want. The tyrants need ulama to back them, to stay in power. Now, if there was, Sisi needs it. Other tyrants need it. Now, if there was, that's why they always turn to them. There was Ikhlaas. Where would the rulers find these people? You need to ask, why am I studying? Why am I teaching? So the people can point the finger at me? So I can get a good salary? Is it because the imam and a da'iya at times today makes better than a lawyer and a doctor? We spoke briefly on this before. But we devote this class, inshallah, to Ikhlaas, so we can work on our Ikhlaas. It's worthy of devoting not one class, many more classes. Sufyan al-Thawri said, مَا عَالَجْتُ شَيْئًا أَشَدَّ عَلَيَّ مِن نِيَّتِي. There's nothing I struggled with more than my intention. That's Sufyan al-Thawri speaking. Ibn Wahab said, I seen Sufyan al-Thawri make sujood. This is the man who said that. Sufyan al-Thawri, he said, Ibn Wahab said, I seen Sufyan al-Thawri make sujood in the Masjid al-Haram after Maghrib, and he never raised his forehead from that first sajda until he heard the call for Isha. One sajda was from Maghrib to Isha. And he says, the worst thing I struggled with was my intention. And Abu Hurairah falls unconscious from it. Ali ibn Fudayl said, I walked around the Kaaba 7 times while Sufyan al-Thawri was still in one sajda. Ibn al-Mubarak said, I wrote from 1,100 scholars, there was not one more knowledgeable than Sufyan al-Thawri. Sufyan said, I don't know anything better than seeking knowledge with sincerity. All that. And he says about himself, he struggles with niyyah so much that it's the struggle that he has to struggle and deal with. The biggest matter he had to deal with. If Sufyan said that, may Allah have mercy on us. Abu Yusuf told the students, be sincere in your deeds. I never sat a setting I intended to be humble except Allah elevated and raised me. I never sat a setting I intended to be humble except Allah elevated and raised me. And I never sat in a setting where I wanted to be supreme over others except that Allah lowered and humiliated me. Ikhlaas. Ikhlaas is the water to the heart. Ikhlaas is the water to the heart that keeps your heart alive. Deficiencies in Ikhlaas dry up that water and kill the heart. Finally, never say, okay, I'm giving up. I guess this is too much. I'd rather not study. We already hinted about that in previous classes. But no, you want the high rank. The first row to enter in the 8 gates. So your standards gotta be different. Habib ibn Abi Thabit said, طلبنا هذا العلم وما لنا فيه نية ثم جاءت النية والعمل بعد. We studied the knowledge and our intention was deficient, had deficiency in it. Or we had no intention. Then Allah granted us with persistence, intention, and on top of that action. So you be persistent and you keep working on that. That's what you got to do. You work on the intention, you work on acting on the knowledge, and you will achieve intention and Ikhlaas. If you didn't get out of this ilm in general and more specific, the ilm of Tawheed, but to keep Tawheed fresh on your mind and your heart so you can say La ilaha illallah at your deathbed, then that's a sufficient goal. Let me tell you this story, a recent story. I had this old friend, Sheikh, and he's an imam of a masjid in the Arabian Peninsula, and I wanted to check up on him. I finally found, maybe a couple months ago, his wife's contact, and when I asked about him, she said that he's been in prison for approximately 7 years. I haven't spoken to him or heard of him in over 12 years or so. So no charges, of course, no nothing, just in prison. So I check up on him to see, these are my brothers that I had known for some time, and they're ulama. So I check up on him to see when he's released, or maybe someone's dua will be answered and he'll be released. And I ended up finding his son's name, who was just killed in Syria. And I had forgot he had an older son, because when I knew him, his son was just a youth. Teenager, not even maybe a pre-teenager. His son in Syria, I found out, was a teacher of Al-Usoor At-Thalaatha. He's the one who used to travel around the camps there in areas and teach the young kids Al-Usoor Al-Thalatha and Quran. In fact, a lot of those young kids that you see who have clips reciting Al-Usoor Al-Thalatha or portion of it, a lot of them were his students. He was in a camp, they were attacked or something, I'm not sure, but he had his camera on. And I seen this footage. He went to defend and help his brothers. He had the camera on, and the camera was recording. And he got suddenly bullets that he himself didn't know about. You know what happened? As soon as the bullet stung him, he uttered Ashhadu, at the spur of the moment, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammad Rasulullah. He said it maybe 15, 20 times right after, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah anna Muhammad Rasulullah. Then he began to pray 2 rak'at. No one came to his aid. I think maybe one person possibly came to his aid and ended up getting shot as well over him. And he ended up praying 2 rak'at. The camera's on recording all this. And then he said, Ya Allah, I seek refuge in you from a day that I will not spend the evening of it in Jahannam. Then he began to recite more Quran as the camera's rolling on until he died. I ask you by Allah, when one gets in a car accident, or he's hitting a nail in the wall, and the nail hits his finger, what's the first word he utters? I'm not saying bullets in the spur of the moment and what's going on. There's no one around to help him. What happens when he hits his finger with a hammer by accident? What's the first word he says? Or when he gets in a fender bender, what's the first word one says? Is it Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, or one of those words that we can't even mention in this halaqah? It's the Tawheed and Ikhlaas. He was walking around the Usoor Al-Thalatha, and it's not about Al-Usoor Al-Thalatha. It's about the Tawheed and Ikhlaas in the heart. يُثَبِّتُ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِالْقَوْلِ الثَّابِتِ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. If you don't get nothing but that out of Tawheed, that you say La ilaha illallah in a hospital when you're on your deathbed, or in a car accident, or wherever way we may die, then that's such one of the biggest things and the best thing you can get out of Tawheed. I mean, Tawheed and Ikhlaas is what causes someone who's in prison for 20 years or 19 years to say, I feel I'm one of the happiest people on the face of this earth. It's only pure Tawheed and Ikhlaas that does that.